Thank you for joining us today to Masterclass Navigating Different Visa Options in the Startup Market. My name is Nikki Nicosia. I am the Associate Director of International and Scholar Services at Babson College. If you don't know where Babson is at, it's sort of west of here. Everyone thinks it's in downtown Boston, but it's a little bit further out. And Babson's known for its sort of entrepreneurship spirit. So I am right now going to introduce my the panelists for today's session. And so I'm gonna give it a try. Elena Nikbashvili.
That's great.
Excellent. She comes from Gentech, and she has an MBA from Dartmouth. And she had, at one time, had a startup called Future Farmers. Currently not working on that venture, but I think it's in your back pocket. Then we have Akash Shah, who also hails from Babson, so we're representing today. And he has a startup called High Time Foods, which he officially started September 2021, but I'm sure it was something that you had been sort of formulating for quite some time. And then online we have Parinita Ahuja, and unfortunately we didn't have a chance to connect ahead of time. Did you want to say anything about what you're currently doing?
Hi, can you guys hear me fine?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Parinita Ahuja. You can call me Pari for the rest of the session. It's much easier, and that's what most people know me by. I'm actually currently working for a biotech company as a senior associate scientist, and I have my own foundation that I recently founded called She Thrive in India. It's a nonprofit, and I went to school at University of Buffalo for a combined bachelor's and master's in pharmacology and toxicology. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, thank you. So to our audience, at least the audience that's present, how many of you are international students? Okay, I would expect probably every hand to be up. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure why you're here. Not that you can't learn more about immigration, but so just to give you a stat, according to the American Immigration Council, 24% of entrepreneurs are considered to be immigrants in the US. That's a pretty high number, and that's something really to be proud of. I think that number doesn't get recognized by the rest of the US as a whole, but it is definitely something where we can say immigrants do significantly impact the business atmosphere of the US. Now, we want to throw in some disclaimers. I am by no means an immigration attorney. I can't sit with you and tell you what you need to do. So this is going to be a general session. This is not a how to file an O visa application process. If that's what you want, I think you need to talk to an immigration attorney. But we're going to have a chance for our panelists to tell you their stories, what were some of the highlights, what were some of the things that they had to watch out for, because as an immigrant, as someone who's trying to navigate this scenery, it gets to be really complex. And it has a lot of challenges. And one little mistake that you make now could potentially impact you 5 years down the road. And that's something that as you proceed, as you're thinking, you don't want your immigration status to become a hindrance. It's going to present challenges, but we don't want you to stop thinking and creating and contributing and making the dreams that you have. We don't want that to stop you from achieving your goals. All right, so we're going to jump in with the first question. And I'm sorry, I'm organizing my cards now. So we're going to start off with Elena. When you were a student, what resources existed for you as you were looking for job placements or opportunities?
Hi, everyone. Thanks also. We also had an immigration office for international students at Dartmouth. So that was the main resource for me. I also try to benefit from the fact that a lot of alums, already had gone through the experiences that I was going through. So I talked to them. So a lot of times I found that both of those perspectives are really important because the immigration office at your school is always going to give you a very conservative answer, right? They're like, there is a risk. And I would be like, what is that risk? Is it 1%? Is it 10? Because it's going to make a difference, and they'll be, well, there is. So I can't tell you what that is. But then you can talk to the alums who went through that process and they'll be like, actually, like, I've done this, 10 other people have done it. It was not an issue, right? So, like, as an example, I had an OPT after I graduated. I was also approved for H-1B visa. I was going to start working at Genentech, and my immigration office and the immigration attorneys at the company were telling me, like, if you leave and come back in to the country, that's a significant risk because, like, is it short term or a long term intent to stay in the US? And OPT is short term, H-1B is a bit more long term, so that might be questioned. So I was like, okay, like, am I gonna go or not? And at that time, I decided to take that risk. I don't know if I would take that risk every time, but at that time, there was war in Ukraine, and I'm from the country of Georgia, and I was like, I want to see my family. I don't know what's gonna happen, after this, so I want to make sure I see them. So I did take that risk. I think it's pretty low, but yeah, that's where all the other international alums helped me, and they were like, I think you're going to be fine. Like, we know so many people who have been able to come back in. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And is it Parini or? Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I pronounced your name right. And I saw a lot of head nodding from you, like, yes, that makes sense. So Parini, what are the things that you looked at while trying to get a job with a startup, specifically as an international student?
You're asking me that, right?
Yep.
You can just call me Pari.
Pari? Okay.
That's
All
right. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't hear you well. Could you repeat that?
Sure. So we saw a lot of head nodding as you were listening to Elena talk about, connecting with your peers and things like that. So as a student, when you were looking for jobs, specifically with sort of that startup concept, what things did you specifically look for as an international student that were key in your job search process?
Yeah, I think that's actually a very important question to ask because initially when I think I started off with internships, and that was where I really learned a lot about the process and about what companies sponsor, what companies are not open to it. There are many companies that immediately when you say that you need sponsorship will eventually stop asking you for interviews for any other positions you apply for. So I think the question you should really ask is like, go on LinkedIn and connect with people who work there, especially people you think potentially it's very easy to find people who have come from international backgrounds, see their backgrounds, what school did they go to, and it's very easy to understand what's their story and reach out to them and understand what the company culture is like, because that is eventually going to determine what sponsorship will look like. And honestly, for me, sponsorship is just not sponsorship to stay here. It's also my mental health. It's security of staying in a place. It's understanding what my future looks like. So those tiny things really do impact in the future, which is something I struggled with and I didn't realize when I was applying for jobs or I was applying for internships. And I think as to Elena's point, reaching out to alums, reaching out to school alums who had gone through the same experience and talking to them and expressing to them like how I was feeling was really important, because you really find support in your community. And that really guides you. I think there are so many people, even at my current company, who reach out to me and be like, interns that came out and they were like, hey, like, what's the sponsorship like? Should we accept the full-time offer? And I think that is an important question to ask people around you. Then there's also online websites that I recommend you should do research in. Like, there are actual websites that will provide you information of like what companies sponsor, and they're very honest, and they tell you like details of like what sort of sponsorships do they offer. Do they only offer H1B? Do they have potential other opportunities like, oh, EB1, EB2? So I think that research is very, very important on your end, and a lot of it just comes from networking. A lot of it will mostly entirely come from networking. So it's very important that you reach out to alums, and it feels awkward to do that because visa is sort of a hush hush topic around you. It's something that people don't really want to talk about openly, especially the ones who have gone through a lot through their journeys, which are many of them, many stories out there. But I think the open conversation is very, very important, and it might sound very cliche when we're saying it, but I know so many people who didn't, and eventually the struggle was really, really hard at the end. Like, the last year of your OPT when you haven't gotten H1B and you're like freaking out and you're like, what are my options? So I think to prep in advance and be prepared and do the networking before you even go look for jobs really mentally prepares you that eventually it might not work out, but that's okay because I have other options, because I can talk to other people and immigration attorneys. There are many other attorneys out there that do free consultation for 15 to 20 minutes that will actually look at your profile and be like, what are your potential options you should target? And I think being in college, if you can do that, that will really help you narrow down what your path could look like.
Thank you for that explanation. Very helpful. And I really appreciated the fact that you highlighted mental health. As an advisor, and I think you can all attest, and if you're an current international student, that mental stress of trying to navigate the next steps, especially your last year of studies, can be an overwhelming process. And it's really important to have a network of people there to support you who know what you're going through, because that mental health stress can be quite burdensome. And so Pari had mentioned, seeking immigration attorney advice about different visa options. And the options that we hear so often typically surround H-1Bs. But there are other options out there. And so, Akash, I was wondering if for you, as you were making your way, what visa options did you look at as you were thinking, okay, I'm a student, I'm doing OPT, and then what? What options did you look at, and what seemed to make the most sense for you?
Sure thing. Hey everyone. So I came in from India and I was doing my full-time 2-year MBA at Babson. I graduated in December 2021, and while I was a student at Babson, I started off my company, High Time Foods. And I think when I graduated, I had 1 year worth of OPT left, and in that 1 year, I had to figure out my visa. Now, H1B was not an option for me because I'm the founder of the company, and like I cannot employ myself. Like I can't be my own supervisor. So I had to go through a different route, and so that's why I applied for the O1 visa, which is what I am on right now. It was a super stressful experience. My OPT expired, I think, Feb 15th of this year, and then my O1 arrived 5 days later. So I was, yeah, it was my mental health during that time was, yeah, definitely a big question mark. But I think there are in terms of, especially if you're planning to start up and if you're planning to like actually found a company, and like the O1 visa is definitely an option that is out there. Most people have questions around one of the most common questions that I get is, oh, as an international student, can you start off a company without having an American co-founder? Yes, you can. My co-founders from Switzerland. None of us are Americans, and the U.S. government actually encourages anyone and everyone to open up register your company in the U.S. And yeah, I think in terms of the O1, there are multiple routes to get that. Especially if you're a founder of a company, if you go through an acceleration program, if you raise a bunch of money, you can definitely apply for those. There are some fantastic resources that are out there, as someone had previously mentioned. Get on calls with lawyers for free. Do not pay money for it immediately. spend 20 to 30 minutes and get that free consultation. If someone's not offering free consultation, reach out to them, ask for free consultation, and just learn from them as to what your profile is and can it get you that O1 visa, or what can you do right now to actually be able to get that O1 visa. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, check in with your international student office. So some schools bring in immigration attorneys not to do individual consultations, but to give an overall, here's sort of the alphabet of the visa options. Here's what you might want to consider post-graduation, post-OPT. And that at least gives you an idea of what is available to you, and it doesn't cost you anything. So if your school does that, if they don't do it, see if they might be willing to do it in the future. It's worth the ask, because in the end, it's your future. All right, so we've provided some cautionary things, but let's go a little bit further. For you, Elena, do you have any cautionary advice for current students who are thinking of going down the path of doing a startup?
Yeah, I would say I have one main advice around that. When I was thinking about, first of all, I was never thinking about a startup, right? When I went to the MBA, I was like, that is definitely not my path. But then, I just met some people who were into entrepreneurship. I took some classes and I was like, wait a minute, like this might actually be what I want to try out. And it was like a very safe place to do it, right? Because you're in school, you can just you have a lot of support, right? You're not like quitting your corporate job and like going and starting something, right? So it's really good time to like experiment and see if that's for you. And my cautionary advice would be kind of don't think of it as like it's like I have to risk everything, right? Going back to mental health, I think being a startup founder already is like a lot of financial pressure, right? You want to have like financial safety, something to fall back on, because we know that like a lot of startups fail, right? So that's already a huge pressure on you. And the other thing is like now you're also an international and you're also navigating that like visa options and that landscape. So my advice would be, start it as a side thing. Like if you're in school, start it in school, see how it goes. Like, is it successful? Is it not? Maybe it's not what you want to do, right? But if you're not in school, like, don't just quit your job and do this thing. Kind of like start it on the side. And if you see that you have traction, right, and it is something that you really love and want to do, then you can kind of slowly transition, right? I think it's very important to have that like safety or like financial safety or like visa options that you can fall back on if this thing doesn't work out.
Thank you. And I think something that popped up in my mind as you were talking is also the parental pressures. I assume a lot of you had parents who invested time and money to get you here. And oftentimes what I hear from students is, well, I want to do this, but my parents aren't exactly too thrilled about it because they're wanting you to get a job. They want you to take the sort of the safe way out. If you're pursuing OPT, I always try to encourage students, well, can you do a little bit of both? Take advantage of OPT. Pursue your passions if it fits within OPT, but then maybe at the same time, make your parents a little bit happy and do the things that sort of what they expected you to do. And so that sort of leads us into, and I'm going to open it up to all three of you. Who were your biggest allies and cheerleaders as you were thinking about pursuing your startup and as you were feeling these sort of heavy weights on your shoulders? Who were your biggest cheerleaders and allies? Yeah, gosh.
Yeah. I think I was just graduating in a couple of months. This is fall of 2021, and I think that was the time I had to make a decision. Do I take up that job in private equity, or do I actually go full time in on High Time Foods? And I think I'd kept like three parameters to decide. Like if I hit these three things in terms of traction, if I'm able to find a co-founder, if I'm able to, understand if I can manufacture my product here and also find sales, then I will pursue this. But then on top of that, I had to pay my rent, and I still have to like live over here. And uh, so I think I I got my first investor from Babson College. It was actually one of our professors who invested in us, and then he actually sat me down and like, okay, fine, like what does it take for you to be able to like legally live in this country, and like how will you pursue this? So like let's map that out. So I was like, I need to raise $500,000, and I need to do this and that. I need to get into an accelerator. I need to create some media and press around me. So it was like, okay, fine, let's start off with the investment amount. I will invest this amount. Can you find other people to invest in this? So then found that. Then I was able to, like, I think after like 2 3 months of not having any salary, I was able to pay myself, then could start living decently out here. And yeah, I think finding that one person who's willing to like understand your entire struggle, that is super important, and it can come from anywhere. One of my, like, after my professor invested, some of my closest friends invested into the company. Some of my classmates from Babson invested. So that's, I think, find people who understand your struggle, and that is where you would get your support from. So,
I can go next. I think yeah, we probably have a different story, but I think for me, I was my biggest supporter first because I don't know. I don't think like anyone saw me as an entrepreneur necessarily. So I definitely had to like believe in myself. Second, it was my co-founder. Like I don't know. Every time she looked at me before we had to like pitch, she just had sparkles in her eyes, and like I could see that she believes in what I'm doing and what we are doing, and that helped a lot. Her name is Yukta. I don't know if she's here, but she's amazing. And then my friends were like, you can do this, like you're a leader, like we know that you can do anything you take up. So I think that was probably the best support for me. So myself, my co-founder, and my friends.
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer this question too. I think Akash and Elena covered a lot of things like family, friends, find that one person that believes in you. But I also feel like being in Boston, I've been in Boston for almost 2 years now, and as I opened myself up to more opportunities, so I helped organize Startup Boston Week, and I was in touch with Steph and Dan and so many different people, and going to different events opened up opportunities to meet more founders, and I actually just met so many different people. And as you enter this community, you realize, everybody understands the struggle, and everybody understands like what you're going through. It's a very, very tough position to be in. And I think that aspect went unread for a long time for me, until I just was like, wow, this is crazy how supportive people are, how much they want to help you, how much they want to understand what you want to do, and then find people around them that can provide you that. So I think the resourcefulness within the community itself to support founders, because we understand each other's struggle, has been such a good motivator and inspiration for me to be like, okay, I can do this, and I need to keep following through and keep being committed to it. And I think that's one of the biggest things I will say from my end.
Thank you. And I have to say, having worked with international students and many of them entrepreneurs or wanting, I think there is that sparkle and that desire that you can tell when someone is really passionate and is driven to doing a startup. And all of the obstacles aside, that's what drives them. And to surround yourself within that community of entrepreneurs is really special, and it helps you keep moving, so you're not feeling, even if you're stuck, it helps you to feel like you can keep moving. So as we sort of transition to that, so for Akash, what are the visa options? We're going to talk about visas, options that allowed you, I know you talked a little bit about to launch your company, but you launched your company before you got the O. So what status were you in? And
Yep.
Yeah.
So Uh, the US government allows you to register your company no matter like immaterial of your legal status or anything. So you are allowed to like go out there and register your company. What it doesn't allow you to do when you're a student is that it doesn't allow you to actively work on your company. They do not define what actively means. So it is up to interpretation. And in my case, I mean, there's obviously starting off a food company, there's a bunch of things that I had to do before I could go out there and sell. We were still in R&D, we were still working with labs and still like, going out there working on our prototype. And but being in Boston, we were able to win a few of these pitch competitions. So because of that, we also had some seed money to actually like work on our product. So I was still a student when I started working. And I think when I graduated, I shifted to the OPT. That now the OPT allows you to actively work on your company. And so you in fact, the OPT is pretty cool. Like they actually let you do a bunch of things on that. And I think at the end of your OPT, there are multiple choices that you can take. Now, if you are someone that comes from India, the choices are actually limited. For other countries, there are more options that are out there. I do not know about those options, but if you're someone who comes from India, you could. I know some startup founders that have actually applied even for the H1B because they've raised significant capital by that time, so much so that they own less than 50% of the company, and they actually have a board of directors that is established, that then they can say that this person is hiring me. So that is one option. And then the O1 is actually, even the O1 is an employment based visa, but the O1 basically tells that it doesn't have any requirement around you raising, like, sorry, it doesn't have any requirement around you owning a certain part of the company or not. And O1 is purely based on abilities, and it could also be based on things that you've achieved before starting off the company. So for example, if you won a pretty significant award while you were younger or while you were in college, even that works out. Even if you have media or press that you've generated for yourself previous to coming to the US, even if it's in your country, even that works out. So that's the advantage of the O1 visa. It's purely on skill set based, and there's no minimum salary that is required. Because right now, if you are on your H1B, and then technically if you're the founder, so maybe you're the CEO or COO, then you have to pay yourself a salary that's in that range of a CEO in the Boston area. And most companies aren't able to do that, especially in your early stages. So that's those two are the major differences that are there. I do know some companies, some other founders that have even taken the L1 visa route, which is basically, if this is the company that you were running back in your home country, they've started off a subsidiary out here and then shifted here. I do not know the exact way of going about it. So yeah, those are the options.
Anyone else have any knowledge of other visas? I can talk a little bit to it, but I wanted to see if either of you have any knowledge.
I know of EB1 and EB2, but I'm not an expert, so I'm going to let you talk.
Okay. And you're thinking of
Yeah, so
making
I'm
that transition?
currently in the process of applying for the EB1A, which is basically a path towards your green card. You could directly also apply for that in your 1 year of your OPT. You could immediately just apply for the EB1A. Uh, it's just that the waiting period of it is so unsure that you don't want to come to a point where you're unable, like you don't have any valid visa and then you've applied for the EB1A, so you're just stuck in this limbo. I didn't want to be in that situation, but I think the O1, I applied and I was able to get, I mean, the entire application itself is a super long process. Get a decent lawyer that can help you out with that, but I got my visa in like 15 days, so that's the good thing about the O1.
Yep. Yeah. Again, I'm not an immigration attorney, so I can't tell you the process. But having worked with international students and entrepreneurs, and as they've sort of transitioned away from being an F1, when students are in F1 status, I've had students, utilize their OPT and use it for pre-completion OPT. So if you've got a business idea and you're like, this is the here and now, if I don't start my business now, I've lost it all. And sometimes to protect a student, we say, okay, you've still got a year of studies left. How about pre-completion OPT? And that could allow you to start up your business before you finish your studies, maybe do it part-time, and that buys you some time. So if you're doing 12 months of part-time pre-completion OPT, that still leaves you with 6 months of post-completion OPT. And instead of then just 12 months of OPT, you end up with 18 months. And it's sort of like creating, I think for all of you, it's creating, you're a puzzle and you're trying to put together your puzzle to figure things out. And so thinking about things creatively, you mentioned the L visa, and that is something that we commonly hear for larger companies. If they've got offices in the US and maybe other locations, someone might transfer to an office location outside of the US, and then down the road, then they transfer back to the US and L. And that can happen for a startup. The important thing with startups, whether or not you're starting your own startup or the startup you're going to work for a startup, is a lot of times they don't know the answers. And it's all of you who have to come up with the answers. You're going to be wearing multiple hats, whether you're the co-founder or you're an employee. You're going to have to help them, the company, figure out what to do with you. And it's really important to be educated about it. So we've got O, we've got L, the E visa, which is an option, but there's, I think, 2 different kinds of E visas. That definitely look at it, but look at it from a reputable source. If you're looking online, go to like government websites to do your initial search so that you've got a base of what you're looking at. Certainly immigration attorneys are going to be who you're going to have to go through in order to make those transitions. But L's, O's, H-1Bs, E's, and then the EB for permanent residency is probably what I commonly see for students who are making a transition. Okay, so Hari, visas aside, what are some of the good things and the challenges you've faced while working in a startup company rather than owning it?
I think one of the things that you just recently hit on was that, you're going to have to wear multiple hats and you're going to have to take a lead on figuring out your immigration visa and journey, because a lot of these startups don't really have immigration attorneys on their team, unlike other bigger companies, corporate organizations that have like full-blown teams that are just focused on immigration. And a lot of these startup companies are actually consulting, like using immigration attorney, like consulting companies as their immigration attorneys. So it's very important to initially and from the beginning get in touch with them and understand your situation and be very honest and communicate to them that this is my situation, this is my current visa status, this is what I'm doing, what could be my next 1 to 3 year plan look like based on your visa. Are you a STEM, non-STEM major? Based on that, I think it's a very important conversation to have and to put your name out there with these immigration attorneys, because you're just a name to them. You're just a name on a paper to them until you actually have a one-on-one conversation and build this relationship where you can reach out to them when it's time to apply for H-1Bs or for other visas. Like, that is a very key aspect to navigate, because your boss might not know of any of this. They are most likely from the US. They have no understanding of the visa situation. They probably don't even know who is handling the immigration side of things for the company. So it's very important to put your name out there, get in touch with these people, have a conversation with your boss, maybe even involve them in the conversation, because I feel like that sort of also makes a difference, because your managers really play a big role. Your team in general plays a very big role in helping you get sponsored or helping you come up with ideas of what more can you do, especially as mentioned, if you want to move to a different country and then come back. I think that relationship of you, I think it's also the side of empathy, right? Just having a conversation with them and having them to understand what your situation is, I think sort of just creates this bond where they can have a conversation with you, and especially your manager, and they have this power to move you to a different country in a different location and then bring you back eventually. So I think that relationship and to get on it from the beginning is an extremely important thing to have. And also be honest about your situation. I think when people sometimes I've heard stories where people can be a bit conceited and not really be honest about their situation. And I think that's where the bad blood thing starts. And then you're in a dilemma of like, where do I go from there? Because my company has no idea what's going on. So be honest from the beginning. And I think that will really serve you right.
Thank you. And so, Akash, as you were creating your business venture and you were, creating your business plan and you had established a partner, and as you were trying to raise funds, what were some of the pivots that you had to make for your business plan to accommodate for your immigration status?
No, that's a great question, because I mean, as an international founder, like, you have to do so many things that if you were just from the US and if you were to start up a company here, you wouldn't have to do. I had to, like, whatever I was doing, I had to document it. I had to keep taking pictures of wherever I was going and things like that. But I think one of the most important things for me was we didn't have a choice, but we had to get into an accelerator, and that was like, and that also, like, it couldn't be just anyone. It had to be either a YC or a Techstars. So we had to, like, work super hard to, like, get into one of those, and we did that. And obviously that's significant equity that we had to give out, right? And typically we weren't sure if we would have done that if I didn't have that immigration process to go through. So that, I think those kind of decisions are ones that you have to keep in mind. But it's, at the end of it, I mean, if you get an opportunity to build your company out here and actually pursue your dream and your passion, so I think over time, that 7% equity that we've given out, that it still hurts, but in the future it might not, is the hope. So yeah.
All right, thank you. And so, Elena, and part of it is, you said, I think what we've heard is, the Boston area is a great environment to sort of grow and do a startup. But we know the reality that life brings different challenges, and sometimes remaining here is not always the best option for a person. Elena, did you ever think about the possibility of searching for startup opportunities outside of the US? And what sort of made you decide to stay?
Yeah, I'm still not sure. Still questioning myself a lot, to be honest. Like, if you know my friends, they will always tell you two things I talk about a lot is Georgia and Amsterdam. All the time. I'm selling Georgia and Amsterdam all the time, because I mean, I lived in Amsterdam before coming to the US for my MBA. And being there, like, as an international is so much easier, like so much easier. And I remember, like, compared to there, like, in 2 years, I had a permanent contract. Like, the company couldn't fire me. Like, I had to do something crazy, walk into work naked to be fired, That's like so much more safety, right? It was like only 5 years to, like, get your, like, residency, citizenship, actually 5 years to, and then I was like, what am I doing? But I think, like, the way I describe it is that, like, the US is this high risk, high reward innovation country, right? It's like the world of opportunities. So I think still making the right decision by staying here, but I've thought a lot about maybe moving back to the Netherlands, maybe moving back to my home country, because, like, I have such a, like, much bigger network there, right? This mental health might not be such an issue, although I would say maybe mental health would not be an issue in terms of, like, financial stability, but I mean, there is war going on there, so, like, that's another kind of threat. So I think, like, everything has pros and cons, and I think, like, at different stages of your life, like, different thing will be right for you. So right now, for me, staying here. So yeah.
Thank you. And for the two of you who are on H-1B, and just to quickly give everyone as we're sort of wrapping up, but is there anything that you want to comment about the H-1B process, or that you were surprised that you had to do, or came up as you were going through that transition?
So I'm actually not on my H-1B. I'm on my OPT. I haven't really gotten it yet, but I have applied the last 2 times. So one of my biggest advice, which I'm so glad that you asked me this question, because I feel like I want to say this, and it took me a very long time to accept it, is be open-minded. As I think Elena also touched upon it, is like, you don't know what's going to come across you and what opportunities will come to move out of the US or stay in the US. I know it's, that parental aspect, that you have invested money or your parents have invested money, but I will say that be open-minded to other opportunities and to looking at other opportunities, because that mental health is extremely important. And it has taken a toll on me many a days. And there were times where I was like, I don't even want to get out of bed, because what's the point? Like, I don't know what the future looks like. And it is extremely difficult to get out of that zone, and surround yourself with people who are supportive and who are willing to learn. It doesn't have to be just people who are international or people who would understand that. I talk about it more often, because I feel like that education aspect of people who live in the US who don't know about this is very important, and creating that awareness that this struggle does exist, and create a support system for yourself, and eventually just be open-minded. I think that's my key takeaway. It took me a long time. Be open-minded going into it. You haven't even started probably, and I'm saying this and it's hard to digest, but be open-minded.
Yeah, I think for me, well, I am on H-1B. I just did like my change of status from F1 to H-1B. And I mean, my company helped a lot with that. And you would think that like if you work for a big company like Genentech, like they know what they're doing when it comes to immigration. But a lot of times, like they know if you really advocate for yourself, right? Like you need to be your advocate in the first place. Like otherwise your manager or your like the immigration office will not like go out of their way. They will not be proactive. So like I had to be very proactive about like, I don't know, it was I think like March of this year. I was like, hey, like what do I do? Like I'm an OPT. Should we like do a STEM extension? Should we do like go to H-1B? And they're like, oh yeah, like yeah, we'll look into it, and it took them like a month or month and a half to get back to me. And I'm just like, by this time, like I need to be applying to one thing or another, so just like keep in mind that like you are the one who cares the most about this thing, and yes, like you are valuable and you have talent, but you're one of, I don't know, like so many people, right? Like if they lose you, not too bad, right? So like probably you care about it a lot more than anyone else. So like make sure that like you're aware of the timelines. Maybe also like, for example, like also have like a group chat with all the international classmates that I have, like kind of like keep track of like what they're doing, like should I be doing something? So that's kind of my experience.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just to add, I think so. Right now, we as a company we're preparing to file for an H-1B of one of our employees, and most people assume that startups cannot apply for H-1Bs for their employees. That's really not true. The U.S. government basically allows you, like any company that is registered, to apply for an H-1B visa. So like you could literally, even in case you're job searching and if you know the founders well, or if you know a company well, they can, even if they haven't done it before, like you can always ask or convince them to file for the H-1B. Now that's a different thing, that we have no idea about how to do the H-1B filing. So the person who we're filing for, she's herself doing all of the work that is required for this. So yeah.
Good for her. Yeah, I think there is a misconception that startups can't. There does take some history. You do have to prove that your business exists in the eyes of the government. So, to avoid any fraudulent filings. But startups do file. They do have success. Granted, you're not filing thousands of applications like an Amazon would be, but Amazon started at one point as a startup. So it happens and it works. It's just sometimes the climb is a little bit more difficult. So I want to say thank you to our panelists. So thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it. I hope today was helpful. You know, in the end, each of you have your own personal story, and each of you have to take care of your immigration status. You're the one that does care about it the most. And we all like to think that we matter to our employers, but in the end, you have the most to gain from all of this. And so it's really important for you to advocate, know what you can and cannot do, and just be careful. Be careful as you proceed. We were talking earlier before this session that little things can be big things 5 years down the road. And so what you don't want to do, or not that you can't make mistakes, sometimes those mistakes have some consequences. So proceed carefully. Just take care of yourself. Yep. Any questions?
I thought so.
Hi Akash, I'm Satish. So I was a student here at Suffolk University. I was on F1 visa, and now I lost my status. So I drop out from the school, and I can stay here till 27. So now I am working with a startup, and like they have not enough funds to fund me for H1B visa or anything. So can you like recommend me or guide me something?
So again, not a lawyer. I've been asked to say this all the time. I said, give any advice. It's not a lawyer, so definitely don't take my advice. Speak with a lawyer. But I think so. They could still file for your OPT, right?
So I lost my F1 status.
Got
So
it.
I was about to graduate in December 23.
Okay.
So I drop out and I'm not graduating.
Okay, got it. And but the thing is, so for them to file for your H1B, they don't really need to it's like filing for the H1B is a super simple process. You're literally just entering your name into the lottery. Once you get picked, that is when the approval of it comes in, and that's when they have to mention what your salary is and what your position is, and all of that. So I think just filing for an H1B is a extremely easy process, and I do believe you could convince your company to be able to do that. And I think it doesn't happen until I mean the final will only happen in like March. So I'm not sure if you would be allowed to be here till then. But what you could do is definitely exit and wait what happens on the H1B, then figure out, as you know, how you want to negotiate with your employer, and then maybe come back in.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Or go to Amsterdam.
That's a way better option. Yeah.
What's your name? Hi, Warren. I'm Jaime. I actually want to comment on that quickly. So I'm an F1 founder, and I'm not a lawyer, so take this with a pinch of salt. But I think what you can do is talk to your startup, have them file it, and if you can pay for it, because I do know there's some costs associated with H1B. I think it's like $3,000 to $5,000 with all the legal fees and application fees and everything once it gets reviewed, I believe. But like if the financial burden is the only thing stopping them from doing it, see if you can pay for it and they just file on your behalf. That's the only thing I have.
Thank you for that advice, my friend. And for you?
Hello, Akash. You mentioned accelerators, right? So would you suggest pre-seed ventures to go for like in-house accelerators by their own universities? And would you suggest converting? So our college, I'm from Northeastern University. Our college has a venture co-op program where founders could turn their venture itself into their own co-op or OPT. Um, Also, another follow-up question would be how much, as you mentioned, there is a minimum requirement for raising capital with an angel. So what is the minimum capital requirement for me to convert my STEM OPT which is of 36 months extension, and to H1B or O.
So multiple things. I'm not sure if you as a founder can be on your STEM OPT. There are some rules around it. I know like some people have figured it out. They advise not to do that. And in terms of, you asked about the college accelerator. So again, different lawyers can tell you different things. At least the lawyer that I worked with, it's a pretty large company called LegalPad. That's all they do. They only file O1 visas, and they mentioned that anything that is academic related is not accepted in the O1 visa filing. And in terms of amount of money raised, again, the USCIS doesn't specify a certain amount. They want to be able to see significant names. So an angel investor technically doesn't help. It has to be a company that is investing. So you would need a venture capital, or you could even work with an angel group. And Boston definitely has quite a few that you could work with. Yeah.
And can I ask another question? So as you know, once you get on the VC train, you never get off. What would what would what would someone who would want to do a bootstrap and doesn't require being a being an online platform, doesn't require that much capital to be raised? What would you suggest that particular company to go?
Yeah, no, I mean, it goes back to the question that Nicole asked previously, right? Like in terms of, like, you as an international student starting off a company, there are things that you typically wouldn't have done, but you have to do for your immigration. Having said that, the best thing that you can do is if you can post amazing revenues, then you don't need to show any VC capital. And if you can show that you're working with all of these companies, these are your clients, and this is the kind of revenues you're getting, and it's a pretty easy way of getting the O1.
Your name, my friend.
Hi, Akash. So I actually have a bunch of questions for you. So if you could spare out like 5 minutes after this, that would be
Sounds
really
good.
helpful. But one question I wanted to ask is about the company structure. So I was reading recently. I mean, what would you suggest a startup founder to register a LLC or a C corp for the beginning, or some other kind of company
So I'm
structure?
not sure if are you saying for filing for an O1 or filing for H1Bs?
One over.
A C corp, hands down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And one more question here.
Hi, my name is Sanjeev. I am a serial entrepreneur. And one of the things I'd suggest, there was a comment made about, there wasn't a lot of discussion about L1s, or some. And I completely understand and empathize with the H1B rat race and the lottery systems, including what one of the panelists is going through. I would recommend. I have run not Genentech size firms, but I have run low middle market companies with ARRs, sizable ARRs. You don't need to be a big company to file an L1. And
Yeah.
for a lot of the students who are graduating who don't want to take the risk that Akash has done, and hats off to you for what you've done. You absolutely can partner with a founder out here. You can go back to your home country, help the founder sustain and grow their business. I did this for one of our employees. She's currently stateside in an L1, and pretty close to getting her permanent residency. So it is absolutely possible if you find a champion, a founder, a co-founder to help you out with that. Very, very possible. So it's a much lesser mental health route, headache route than the darn H1B rat race that now.
All right. We have one final question in the back. And what is your name, my friend?
Hey everyone, my name is Nikunj Doshi. So, like Akash, I know like the situation which you were in. Like, I'm also in a similar kind of situation. My F1 visa is about to get expired in a couple of months now, 2 months, and then my work authorization is like almost till like 4 months, 4 more months. So, I just want to know how much turnaround time it would take. Like, if I wanna start my own company, like if I wanna found a C corp, or like if I want to like be in the entrepreneurial kind of visa. So what would be the turnaround time for that? Like how many months does it take in approx for the entire process?
Uh, so I mean, again, like the filing of the O1 is a extremely long process. There's a bunch of documents that you wanna submit. Having said that, one point that I totally forgot is, and it's this is only like this is special to the Boston area, is that there is a program called the GEIR program, which is Graduate Entrepreneur in Residence program. Very few colleges have that. Babson College just restarted it, and University of Massachusetts Boston also has this program, which is basically you're incubating your startup at in the campus, and then the college is basically giving you an H-1B visa. Especially when you have a short time period like that, those are amazing resources to go after, because they're able to. There's no lottery here because it's an academic H-1B that they're providing, and that's definitely a route which a lot of you can take. They have, I think their requirements are pretty well laid out, and reach out to these colleges. There's that Just search GEIR USA. There's a bunch of colleges that provide this, but in the Boston area itself, there are two of them that do it. So that is a route that you could take. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a trade-off.
Yep.
There's a give and take. So it's not
Yep.
just that the college is saying, "Hey, come here, we'll give you an H-1B." There is, typically with the schools, you establish you're working from the college. A lot of times, you're hiring internships from the college. You're providing mentorship. So it's it's an agreement
Yep.
between the two.
And it's
But
pretty heavy fees also that you're paying. It's almost around you would have to spend close to around $20,000 as rental that you're paying for incubating in the space. But it is an option.
Yeah.
Is that it?
I think so.